Pee-wee, the two constants, Kiss and Dogly Dogs. Fellow Kiss fans, welcome to It's All For You Demons, celebrating the fun of being a Kiss fan. Tonight we are celebrating the Alive 3 era, my history, my friend's history, and how a piece from my teenage closet ended up on this Mexican rock and pop magazine. I don't know what the heck that was, but this is the Kiss Confidential Paul Stanley airbrush shirt. Backstory, fun, nostalgia, and 100% rock and roll magic. To start this story, we'll go back to the summer of '92. Kiss had just released Revenge, and by this time Danny and I were fully vested in being Kiss fans. We were no longer sitting on the outside. They had released Hot in the Shade, done a world tour, brand new album came out, heavy album, back to the core heaviness. And another world tour was about to start, and we were part of the army. And being a member of that army, you looked for Kiss everywhere. The summer of '92, Danny and his family went to vacation, I believe in Virginia Beach, and at the beach, a man was doing airbrush shirts, and Danny found out he could do Gene, and Danny bought the coolest Gene Simmons airbrush shirt I've ever seen in my life. And when he came back to St. Joe, it was just like, holy crap, this is an awesome new entity for us all to follow. And speaking of entities to follow, the summer of '92, tribute bands were popping up everywhere, and that summer, Danny, Brett, and myself went to see a tribute band called KISSTORY in Olathe, Kansas. And at that show, a man had created 3 distinct, one-of-a-kind airbrush shirts, one with Peter, one with Ace, and one with Paul. And knowing Danny had the Gene Simmons shirt, I opted to get the Paul Stanley shirt, and Danny and I, wanting to be rock stars ourselves, were now officially Simmons and Stanley. And if the planets couldn't align any better, it was announced on November 10th, 1992, that Kiss was actually going to bring the Revenge tour to our hometown, St. Joseph, Missouri, little podunk St. Joseph, Missouri, November 10th, 1992, 8 o'clock, the Kiss Revenge show was coming to town. So the plan was, Danny, Brett, and myself, as a general admission show, the plan was we were going to get to Civic Arena 8 o'clock in the morning and just wait all day long, because truly the plan was, between Danny and myself, we were going to get these airbrush shirts to Gene and Paul, meet our heroes, and have one hell of a rock and roll night. And that night was kind of a catastrophe, but also an amazing show because our heroes were in front of our face, exploding, fire, everything, right in our hometown. But Paul was sick, the set was cut short, Gene sang a few of Paul's songs, but somewhere in the night, Danny took off his Gene Simmons shirt and held it up, and Gene motioned for him to throw it on stage. Gene put Danny's shirt on his face, played bass, did the classic Alive 2 Gene Simmons moves, and then threw his shirt off stage. Danny turned to me with the most wide-eyed expression I've ever seen in my entire life, and he was just yelling, "Do it, do it." I took off my Paul shirt and held it up. Paul kind of nodded towards it, smiled, and then motioned for me to throw the shirt on stage. I threw it, didn't even come close to the stage, dropped right in front of the stage, and I thought, well, shit.
That's right, she actually stops and says, shit.
This is over. But then a security guard or someone tossed the shirt to Paul. Paul looked at it, held it up to the crowd, then put it on his mic stand for the remainder of the show. Again, the set was cut short, very short show, but right before the Star Spangled Banner, Paul, much like Gene, took my shirt, threw it off stage, and that was the end of our night. The most magical, fun, strange concert I've ever been to in my life, and the end of our airbrush shirts. Or so we thought. And then the following spring, May '93, Kiss Alive 3 was released, and this is one of my favorite records of all time. This era of the band felt like a club. Not only was the band on fire again, Gene and Paul were appearing on Howard Stern, but grunge was coming in heavy and strong. And if you were a Kiss fan in 1993, you were the odd man out. And we loved it that way because it felt like a club. It was our special little thing. It was no one else's, it was ours, and we stood proud, feet firmly planted in the Kiss Army. And then in August of 1993, a live video came out, and Kiss's videos, VHS releases throughout the 80s, beginning with Exposed, kicked ass. Exposed, Extreme Close-Up, and then Confidential. And we bought Confidential on the day it came out, went to my house, put it into the VCR, and everything changed.
I got this really cool shirt. I looked out in the audience one night and I saw this guy with my face as big as this shirt in makeup, and I wore it for I don't know how many shows. I mean, it was one of my favorite shirts. I like getting that kind of stuff out of the audience, so it was just very cool.
To say we were flabbergasted by that clip is an understatement. It was, jaws were on the ground, screams were made. It was absolutely incredible to have a little history of our own St. Joseph, Missouri, my teenage bedroom. A shirt I wore all the time to show up in a Kiss video was absolutely amazing. And then not long after that, in some metal magazine, Metal Edge, Hit Parade or something, we saw an ad for a Brazil rock magazine where Paul was actually wearing the shirt. Pictures of Paul were in this magazine, and I ended up buying this magazine. It was a poster magazine. Younger me, of course, threw away the magazine, only kept the posters, which naivety on my part, but I was able to snag the coolest Paul Stanley poster ever of him wearing my t-shirt. This is one of my favorite posters of all time. Hung on my teenage bedroom wall, hung on my college wall, has hung in the basement as an adult. It's just one of those posters that make me smile and proud to be a Kiss fan every time I see it. And this was the second poster in that magazine. Still have it, not framed. I need to buck up and frame this one day because that is also super cool. And just when I thought all of the Paul Stanley airbrushed magazine fun was over, this just arrived in the Wax Night basement. Now this is the October 1994 Rock and Pop magazine from Mexico. I have never seen my airbrush shirt on a magazine cover, so that's badass. B, I've never seen it so close up beyond that first poster. But this, this took me right back to being in my basement as a teenager, watching Confidential for that first time with Danny, Brett, David, and freaking out that is my shirt. A shirt I used to wear all the time, dreaming of becoming the next Paul Stanley. And there is Paul Stanley wearing my shirt on a magazine cover once again. Inside, a pretty cool centerfold, Paul doing that Steven Seagal era thing. But I love this because good detail of the eye and the hair, which you can compare to my original photos of being a teenager. This just, once again, blows my mind at the fun and the history and the magic of me being a Kiss fan back then. I'm still proud as I was back then. It's still as fun as it was back then. It's even more fun now. Because honestly, that's the secret of life right there. Doing what you loved to do as a kid, as an adult, eliminates all the bullshit that you deal with day to day and just brings your mind back to focusing on that fun we had as teenagers. Big props to my buddy Scotty for telling me about this magazine. It would have gone under the radar and I would have missed it, so thank you, Scotty, for bringing this up and adding once again a little bit of nostalgia into the Wax Night basement. I know this story means absolutely nothing to anyone else, but it means the world to Danny and myself. This was our little carve into rock and roll history. When we bought our revenge tickets, we had these shirts and we thought, wouldn't it be cool if? We dreamt it, we did it, and the planets aligned. And for that, I am forever grateful. I am forever proud to be a KISS fan, and this is just my little moment in KISSTORY and celebrating the fun of being a KISS fan. Thank you for hanging with us tonight and waxing a little rock and roll nostalgia with us. Be good to your babies. Spay, neuter, microchip. Take care, be safe. We will talk to you soon.